the skills, be the boss. No more time to feel lost. Lead the way every day. Find success, it's here to stay. Rise and shine, it's your time. Skill up, raise the climb. Navigate, innovate. It's your fate, don't be late. Get the skills, be the boss. No more time to feel lost. Lead the way every day. Find success, it's here to stay.
If you're a new manager or hoping to be a new manager, join us in our exploration into what managers need to know. This program will set you up for success by building your knowledge and confidence in the skills you need to be effective. Welcome to the third week of negotiation skills on getting past no. And this is one of the most important weeks because this is when we look at how to reframe all of those provocative tactics that people use, stonewalls, attacks, and tricks and lies. So we're looking at how to reframe them. This step provides various techniques to handle obstructive, offensive, and evasive negotiation strategies through reframing. And what we mean by reframing is recasting what the other person says in a form that directs attention back to the problem of satisfying both sides' interests. In other words, you act as if they were trying to solve the problem. Reframing works because every message is subject to interpretation. You have the power of positive perception, the ability to put a problem-solving frame around whatever the other person says. They will often go along with your reinterpretation, partly because they are surprised you have not rejected their position, and partly because they are eager to pursue their argument. Because the other party is concentrating on the outcome of the negotiation discussion, they may not even be aware that you have subtly changed the process. Instead of focusing on competing positions, you are figuring out how to best satisfy each side's interests. So let's first look at stonewalls. We want to go around them. So the first thing we can do is ignore the stonewall. If the other party declares, you're not going to get away with that interpretation, or we're not going to pay for that, you can't be sure whether that person means it or is just bluffing. So test the other person's seriousness by ignoring the tactic. Keep talking about the problem as if you didn't hear what they said, or change the subject altogether. If they're serious, they will repeat the message. The second thing to go around stonewalls is to reinterpret the stonewall as a desire. Suppose a company representative tells you, I told my CEO that you could get it done by Tuesday. If you don't, I'll lose my job. That person is locked in. If you challenge this commitment, you will only make it harder for the representative to back away. So instead, reinterpret that commitment as a hope and direct attention back to the problem. Well, I guess we can say that you tried your best. However, the CEO knows that this is a busy time. We'll get it done as quickly as we can. Your reinterpretation makes it easier for the representative to make a graceful exit from his or her previous commitment. Or imagine that you have to deal with a rigid deadline laid down by the other person. Instead of rejecting it, you can soften it by reinterpreting it as a target. I can appreciate that your attorney would like to be here to discuss our action, but can't make it until tomorrow. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to proceed with our meeting while I'm here today. Then turn to the problem to show your goodwill. But I'll certainly be happy to come back to meet with him or her at a mutually convenient time. The third way to go around stone walls is to take the stone wall seriously, but test it. For instance, treat your counterpart's deadline seriously, but as it approaches, arrange to be called away for an urgent phone call or a meeting. One leading negotiator explains, "We like deadlines. The shorter, the better, because once you've broken the deadline, you've knocked them off their game plan." Another way to test a stone wall without challenging it is to ask questions. If a car salesman says that the price is final, you can ask whether you could get financing or a good trade for your old car. If the salesperson begins to show flexibility, you will have determined that the price may not, in fact, be final. You can sometimes turn the other party's stonewall to your advantage. If they have given you an inflexible deadline, for example, you can say, "I'd like to be able to convene the board to make you a more generous offer, but in view of the time problem, this is the best I can do at the moment." Or, "To meet your deadline, we'll need your help. Can you take care of pickup and delivery?" So you're acting as if you take it seriously, but then find some credible reason not to make good on it. Or ask questions whose answers could indicate there's greater flexibility on the stonewall issue. Or turn it to your advantage. To meet your deadline, we'll need your help. So those are 3 ways to go around stone walls. We have 5 ways to deflect attacks. The first way is to simply ignore it and just go on talking about the problem. Suppose a small company accuses you of trying to kill small businesses and using the law to help the larger corporations build dominance in the marketplace. You should simply ignore the attack and focus on the work that needs to be done. If the other party sees that abusive tactics do not work, they will often stop. Now, what happens very frequently is there's an attack on you personally, and you need to reframe that attack on you as an attack on the problem. So you reinterpret the attack. Suppose a customer asks you a technical question that you can't answer and then says, "Do you know what you're doing?" You could become defensive and hostile, or you could ignore the personal criticism, acknowledge the point, and reinterpret it as an attack on the problem. "You've asked a good question, and I'm going to have to check with one of our experts in this area to answer it." Your attacker is making 2 claims. First, that the action you're proposing is no good, and second, that you are no good. You have the power to choose which claim you want to address. By choosing the more legitimate concern about the technical action, you can effectively sidestep the personal attack and direct the other person's attention toward the problem. So ignore the personal criticism, acknowledge the point, and reinterpret it as an attack on the problem. You can reframe a personal attack as friendly by misinterpreting it that way. A contractor says, "You're awfully young and inexperienced to try to pull the wool over the eyes of someone who's been in this industry for 30 years. You can respond, "Well, I can't argue with that. That's why I'll appreciate your cooperation as we work through this together." In everyday life, you can reframe a personal attack as a show of concern and shift the focus back to the problem. For example, if the other party tries to unsettle you by saying, "You know, you don't look too good. You sure you feel all right?" You could answer, "Thanks for your concern. I feel great now that we're getting close to agreement. What happens, I worked in state government for a long time, and this came up quite frequently. Needing to reframe from past wrongs to future remedies. The other party's attack often takes the form of blaming you. The customer says, every time I've worked with your company, something always goes wrong. And on he goes, sniping about the past. The current problem is forgotten. The opportunity always exists to reframe the issue from the past to the future, from who was wrong to what can be done about the problem. You can say, well, it sounds like you've had some difficulties with our company in the past. I'm sorry to hear that. Now, what can we do to make sure that we can avoid problems in the future? When the other party criticizes you for a past incident, don't miss the opportunity to ask, how can we make sure it never happens again? Where appropriate, reframe the blame as joint responsibility for tackling the problem. And the last way to deflect an attack, and I'm getting my notes here, is to reframe from you and me to we. And we can do that both verbally and physically. When a customer is claiming that it's all your fault, a simple change in language from you and me to we can help. You can ask, how can we work this through so we can resolve this matter as quickly as possible? We creates a side-by-side stance, drawing attention to common interests and shared goals. Another simple and powerful way to reframe the situation from you and or me to we is through body language. When people argue, they usually stand or sit face to face, physically expressing their confrontation. So find a natural excuse to sit side by side. Pull out a document or proposed agreement and sit down next to your counterpart to review it. Talking side by side will not magically transform the situation, but it will reinforce the idea that you are partners facing a tough challenge together. So reframe, ignoring the attack, reframing an attack on you as an attack on the problem, reframing a personal attack as friendly, reframing from past wrongs to future remedies, and reframing from you and me to we. The last reframing involves exposing tricks and lies. We can ask clarifying questions. If an employee from another part of the company tells you that he is being insured by someone in purchasing, that he does not have to fill out the usual requisition sheet, say in a non-judgmental tone, and of course you've got to be careful about your tone. You must have good reasons for believing that this is true. I'd be interested in knowing why you think so. Check his or her assumptions when they quote infallible authorities or methodologies. Don't hesitate to press a little. And watch for ambiguities in their answers as well as outright evasions. If you spot a contradiction, don't challenge it directly. Just ask confused. If you are of a certain age or you have watched Columbo with Peter Falk, he plays a detective who very often says, I'm confused. And then he asks something that puts the person on the spot. I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't understand. Could you explain how this relates to what you said before? One way to test your suspicions is to ask your counterpart questions to which you already know the answers. You can learn a lot from observing how the person shades their responses. A common trick is to mislead you into believing that they have decision-making authority when they don't. You may use up all your flexibility only to discover that they have to get the approval of someone else who may well ask for additional concessions. To protect yourself, ask questions early on to clarify the other party's authority. Am I correct in assuming you have the authority to settle this matter? Make sure you get a specific answer. If they don't have full authority, find out who else must agree and how long it will take to get the answer. Another common trick is the last-minute demand. After you have reached agreement, they bring up something new. So instead of challenging the demand, you can ask, are you suggesting that we reopen the negotiation? If they say no, you can say, well, then I think we should just stick with the agreement we've already reached. If, however, the person says yes, you can say, all right, we'll treat it as a joint draft to which neither side is committed. You check with your CEO and I'll check with mine. And let's meet tomorrow to discuss possible changes. Because if that person wants something extra, you should get something in return. So in summary, ask questions to ask and clarify your counterpart's statements. Check their assumptions. Watch for ambiguities in the answers as well as outright evasions. If you spot a contradiction, don't challenge it directly. Just act confused. The second thing that we can do to expose tricks and lies is to make a reasonable request. Because you have one advantage in dealing with a trickster that you don't have with someone who is openly uncooperative. And this is their stake in appearing reasonable. So take the trickster at their word and put it to the test by placing the individual in a dilemma. Either they live up to the pretense of cooperation or they drop the sham altogether. In other words, you can administer a reasonable request test. So you design a request that your counterpart would agree to if they were genuinely cooperative. For instance, a contractor claims that it received all necessary approvals months ago. However, you have not seen any documentation. A reasonable request would be to ask the contractor to fax over a copy of the documents. If he tells you that the paperwork has been misfiled so he can't send you copies, he'll look uncooperative, and you can conclude that you can't rely on what he has told you. The other party may cite a hard-hearted partner just as justification for an additional demand. It looks all right to me, but I'm sure my partner will never agree to this. In response, you can make the following request. Why don't we set up a meeting with your partner right now so that we can resolve this? So we're making a reasonable request. The other party now has a choice. They can let you meet with their partner, which should give you a better sense of the concerns and whether this is indeed a trick. Or they can refuse to let you meet with him, which should put you on your guard. Or they can drop the tactic altogether and stick to the original agreement. Whatever the outcome, you're free to follow up with further reasonable requests and clarifying questions. The third thing that we can do to expose tricks and lies is to turn the trick to our advantage. If you see through the other party's trick, you can often turn it to your advantage. Suppose you are representing the wife in a divorce case. The husband promises to pay child support, but you have reason to believe he will fail to do so. When you raise your concern, his lawyer protests that his client will certainly pay. Are you certain, you ask? Absolutely. My client is an honorable man, replies his lawyer. then he will surely not object to adding a clause that in the case of 3 months non-payment, the client will receive his equity in the house in substitution for child support. The more vigorously the lawyer has affirmed his liability, the harder it will be to object. So you test the trick by indicating how it will benefit you. For example, if the other party indicates they cannot meet a previously agreed upon deadline, indicate what part of the agreement you will now not be able to fulfill. And all of these are taken from Getting Past No by William Ury. So I hope those are helpful to you. If you would like help in learning how to get past no, please schedule time to talk with me. And you can see my URL as well as the QR code. Next week, we're going to look at what we do if reframing has not resolved the issue. We've relaxed, so we're not reacting to the tactics. We've tried to refocus the conversation, so by using problem-solving questions and clarifying, refining what's being discussed so that it gets back to solving the problem. If that doesn't work and they're going to use these tactics, we've looked at different ways to deal with those tactics. But let's say that person is still not cooperating. We're going to look at how to refine and relate, which is how we're going to move from getting past no to getting to yes. And if you were with us for the Getting to Yes program, you will recognize many of the techniques that we're going to discuss next week, with one exception, something new. So thank you for sharing your time with me, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you so much for coming and participating in our discussion of what managers need to know. You can find the videos of this and previous sessions on my YouTube channel or under events on my LinkedIn profile. I'll look forward to seeing you again next week.
Get the skills, be the boss, no more time to feel lost. Lead the way, every day, find success, it's here to stay. Get the skills, be the boss, no more time to feel lost. Lead the way, every day, find success, it's here to stay. It's here to stay. Oh, it's here to stay. It's here to stay. Yeah. Get the skills, be the boss, no more time to feel lost.